Welcome to another episode of Unreleased Games. Now I am very excited to make this video, and coincidentally something amazing has recently happened that has caused excitement in the gaming community. Let me explain. Banjo Kazooie was released for the Nintendo 64 in 1998, and it became an instant classic. Now this was back when Rare was no stranger to making awesome games, and before they focused on making crappy Connect games. One thing you may not have known is that Banjo Kazooie wasn't always Banjo Kazooie. I guess we can thank Super Mario 64 for that, but we'll get to that later on. In fact, it wasn't even a Nintendo 64 game. It actually wasn't even a platformer at all. In 1995, after the roaring success of Donkey Kong Country for SNES, Rare knew they had something very special and decided to improve on the Donkey Kong pre-rendered engine. They embarked to create an epic game, what can only be described as one of the best SNES games to ever release. They dubbed this project Dream. The game was to follow a teenage boy named Edison and his dog, who caused trouble for a band of pirates, and their leader named Black Eye. Now until December 23 of 2015, this was the only known picture to exist of Project Dream. We were also left with a pre-rendered image of what Edison was supposed to look like in the game. There have been claims from Rare employees, including composer Grant Kirkhope, who have seen a tech demo of the game being run on an SNES and described it as simply beautiful and groundbreaking. Grant Kirkhope also stated that if this tech demo still existed, it was probably still locked away in Rare's vault. But as of about a week ago from recording this video, Rare did something no developer has done to my knowledge. They unearthed and released to the public gameplay footage from their vault of the never before seen Dream. And here it is, Dream. The first thing we see is what the title and logo of the game would have been. And then we are presented with gameplay itself. Now personally, I was blown away. I've followed this game for so long, and we finally get to see what can only be described as an isometric Donkey Kong style game. Now even though they don't speak about it much in the video, it was all pretty much word of mouth that the game was about pirates. But as you can see in the title, the game was actually about Edison being in a world inhabited by giant creatures. The conception of pirates didn't materialize until later on in the project's conception. The only element that survived the concept of Dream was the main antagonist, Captain Black Eye. He actually made it to Banjo Kazooie. He can sometimes be seen in the game quoting, "I had a dream once," referring to Project Dream itself. It's also very overwhelming to see that the renditions we were provided for the past 20 years of Edison were actually spot on and not just fakes. And that's one thing that I think is so cool about this recent information release, is all the confirmation that we're getting from Rare. Throughout the video would also be the first time we ever get a look at Edison's dog companion, whom we also did not know had a name prior to the video. He's called Dinger. If you look closely, Dinger's face has a very close resemblance to Banjo himself. So it's likely they took Dinger's design and turned him into what would become Banjo. I think we can all see what made this game so special. The random attack of giants seemed like an interesting idea, and the animations look amazing. According to the developers, this would be a random occurrence that would happen throughout the game, and you had to try your best to avoid getting squished. You can also see the small hints of RPG style fighting, as the enemies take quite a few hits to take down. Since this was a very early build, I could only imagine that there was to become some sort of HP display for the enemies, as it would be weird just to whack an enemy over and over again without any sense of damage like that. During Dream's development, the game pushed the limits of the Super Nintendo far beyond its capabilities, and thus its focus was turned to the Nintendo 64. Now this is something that I wasn't even expecting, given that they already gave us an inside look at this classified game. They also bust out the Nintendo 64 progress demo of Project Dream as well. One interesting fact is also confirmed by Grant Kirkhope, was the fact that the game was in fact so huge that it was to be supported by the Nintendo 64 disk drive that was promised but never released in America. During this time, Conker's Bad Fur Day, or 12 Tales as it was known while being developed, took inspiration from Mario 64's development team. The team working on Dream were sent to look at Conker's team's progression. Mario 64 was considered to be the major reason why Project Dream took the major leap of changes that it did. This is also confirmed in the video. It was around this time that having a human protagonist was completely scrapped, and instead an animal was chosen. In yet another piece of information that we were never aware of, Banjo was to have a skateboarder type of style, with a jump that emphasized his skateboarding roots. I think that the developers realized how awkward this one was and just scrapped the idea entirely. Banjo was supposed to rock a hat and sneakers to kinda give out a skateboarder vibe. The game footage also confirms that Clanker, the metallic shark in Banjo Kazooie, was in fact a real shark at some point in Banjo Kazooie's development, and for whatever reason was turned mechanical late in the development. It seems as though Grant Kirkhope, the composer, has been the only person to openly talk about this project in the past and made statements on his website. I'm going to read a few quotes from his experience with Project Dream, quoting, "The core team from Donkey Kong Country had given Donkey Kong to another team to carry on with, and was working on this game, which was going to be Rare's greatest SNES title. It was very secret, and Tim Stamper was the leading team. Nobody outside the team knew anything about it. I was shown the demo of the game running on the SNES, and I was blown away. It looked beautiful and was obviously going to be a big step up from Donkey Kong Country. I think the final nail in the coffin for Dream came from another one of Rare's teams. The Killer Instinct team had started Conker, and it looked and played fantastically. In Dream, we had this elaborate floor system that meant we could stretch the polygons into any shape to create some really great looking landscapes that really hadn't been tried before. Unfortunately, the N64 didn't have the power to run it at a decent frame rate, and we were struggling to make it work. Now I'm going to show you guys a few things that weren't shown in the video, but rather tweeted out and later deleted by some Rare developers. It seems like Rare is encouraging its developers to dig up early prototypes of its games to celebrate the Rare Replay release and the revival of the company. Many of these pictures and tweets are revealing even more interesting features of this game. For example, Gregg Mayles, along with Tim Stamper and others, are digging up some interesting items of Dream and early Banjo concepts. Mayles has gone out to reveal that Banjo wasn't a fully 3D game, but rather a 3D game with a fixed camera like Donkey Kong. He also revealed that initially Banjo was to have 3 hits until he died. This picture of what Banjo would have looked like with his hat and sneakers. The first hit would have removed his hat, the second hit would have removed his sneakers, and then upon the third hit, he would have lost a life. Among other things, Mayles released an early look of what Banjo may have looked like, as well as a title screen with a different title altogether. He also tweeted out pictures of a hub world and an early concept of a level. Tim Stamper also confirmed that he is one of the owners of the Dream cartridge. He tweeted several pictures of it and even teased one of him powering it on. As you can see, the cartridge is huge and it isn't even a finished game, so it's no surprise that this game was moved to a more powerful console like the Nintendo 64. A few pictures even shows Tim Stamper freezing the actual cartridge itself and then thawing it out very slowly, and surprisingly it still works. Now it still isn't known if this is the only cartridge to exist of Dream. There still may be others floating around somewhere. Will Bryan, an ex-employee of Rare, also did some digging up and came up with a few very interesting pieces of Dream. He actually auctioned off for charity an empty floppy that was used to transfer information between modems. Along with that, he also had a few concept arts from a villain that he had originally created named Cockeye. This was sold on eBay for about £300. A very interesting piece of history if you ask me. Now in E3 of 2015, Rare teased a new game they were working on titled The Sea of Thieves. Immediately, fans were speculating that this would have been the spiritual successor of what Dream was supposed to be. And they weren't wrong. Seems like this fact alone is the reason why they dug up this prototype out of their vault. Developers also mentioned this towards the end of their video. Well, that's it. That's Dream. It was really interesting to me that one of the developers gave hints that there may in fact be prototype carts of Dream floating around somewhere.
That last Super NES cartridge became a thing of legend, so if anyone ever finds that, that'll be worth a few quid on eBay.
Could he be referring to the cart Tim Stampler has? I guess only time would tell. Thank you guys for watching. Check out my other unreleased game videos, and hit that like button if you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.